Hello, Ronald Holt here. In the past, I've put out some videos on quantum navigation, and I haven't done that for a while. And so there seems to be a growing impetus to share about some things that I've been monitoring in quantum navigation classes. So inside of our group sessions, quantum navigation, we've been monitoring over the past few years the correlation between symptomology that we're experiencing with that of the changing dynamics in the Schumann resonance. And the Schumann resonance, for those who have no inkling on what Schumann resonance is, it's the frequencies that the Earth puts out. So there's a Facebook site called Schumann Resonance. If you go there, it's a great community and they monitor the daily fluctuations going on with the Schumann resonance. Anyway, the Schumann resonance has been responsible for keeping and maintaining a frequency balance in the earth. So it sets a tone, a frequency, a cadence, kind of like a metronome in music that sets the timing of the reality. As an example, it's been at 7.83 for a long time with very minor fluctuations and variations. But that's been changing over the past few years. And what's been going on has been spiking that 7.83 hertz and increasing it in various assorted ways. So that's having an effect in our fields, our consciousness fields, our emotional fields, our physical fields. So when the frequency ranges in the Schumann resonance has been spiking, you may experience like short-term memory loss, foggy brain, lightheadedness, dizziness, fatigue, sleeplessness, anxiousness, high anxiety or stress, tinnitus. Yes, tinnitus, ringing in the ears, eye rainbows. Rainbows, those are like these fluctuations that come out of nowhere that seem to look like a rainbow. They start off small, like in your vision range in one or both eyes, and it develops into a whole kaleidoscope of rainbow colors, and then it goes away. Weakness, hard to breathe, various things such as that. And so I first was paying closer attention to that around the time that COVID was hitting and we were all stuck indoors. And, with greater attentiveness to what's going on inside of ourselves, um, it seemed to highlight the spotlight on the changing dynamics going on inside the self. So, anyway, uh, started monitoring those things and watched how the graphs are very detailed and it's been spiking like crazy. So, um, our typical magnetic memory, our day-to-day beta consciousness type of 3D reality memory, is highly dependent on the magnetics and the frequencies of the Schumann resonance. And so when this starts spiking, it gets harder and harder to hold a lot of detailed memory and functions from that perspective. Now, there's a big purpose for that, and that is that changing that frequency, shaking it up, the 7.83 and the magnetic memory for the character's 3D beta consciousness, shaking it up helps identify a vaster sense of intelligence inside of the individual. So as the frequency of the Schumann resonance spikes and does all kinds of freaky things, it distorts the memory function, the certainty and clarity and the former stability of 3D perspectives of our reality, and how we felt so confident and certain in that 3D reality. So by distorting it, by shaking it up, it blurs our anchorage in that former 3D perspective and tends to leave us searching internally for a new stability, a new sense of center and centeredness, which has us reaching out to our true self, our true fabric, which our consciousness already is. So at the height of the spiking and the dynamic changes inside of the Schumann resonance, we get to see a lot of old stories, unprocessed shadow issues returning to the surface. A lot of these things are compartmentalized. And so as the dynamics change inside of the Schumann resonance and it starts shaking foundations of our memories and how we perceived reality, it starts to bring forward hidden little treasures that underprocessed or incompletely processed dramas, traumas, old stories that are needing a little more attention to help resolve, integrate, and transform, release. So it's been this Schumann resonance spiking and changing dynamics has been assisting in kind of clearing our closets, attic, and hidden compartmentalizations of stored dramas and traumas we've tucked away inside of ourselves, but haven't really had the time or haven't approached cleansing, clearing them out. So, as this has been taking place, it's been met with the assistance of a lot of the astrologics. And if you've been following the astrologics, the planetary movements, it's been having dynamic changes inside of us that are actually working in concert with the Schumann resonance in order to assist in the cleansing and clearing of things we as a human keep attaching to and not letting go of, not transforming and integrating and releasing and feeling the freedom and the clarity within. So the astrologics and the Schumann resonance have been working, and I don't know if you've noticed, but it's been an intense period for the last few years, to say the least. And so that increase in that intensification has led to, if you've been doing your work, it's been leading to a greater sense of sensitivity, clarity, peace within. And so through that process, the sensitivity has led to a correlation with what's been happening in the sun. So inside of the sun, there's been a lot of solar flares, X-class and M-class flares affecting also this process with the Schumann resonance spiking, the astrologics opening up the doors of our inner compartmentalizations where we've held onto a lot of the belief systems, the dramas and traumas, the afflictions that we keep regaling against ourselves and wounding ourselves with. So if we've been processing that, it's been opening up a vaster sense of peace, clarity, sensitivity, vulnerability, and inclusivity. So through that process becoming clearer, been noticing, especially as 2026 has started, the year of the fire horse, or more appropriately, the fire hose, the intensification of all of these challenges, dramas, and traumas afflicting the external reality and our internal reality for us to navigate through. um, that sensitivity has been increasing towards what's been happening in the sun. So inside of the sun, some dynamics are changing. Now, all things are alive and part of the continuum of consciousness. And so inside of the continuum of consciousness, there is just the oneness, even though there is the separation of identification inside of the um, uh, separation realities. And inside of the separation realities, one can experience feeling like one is separate from all that is. And so at present, there is a great assistance with the earth, with the planets, with the sun, with everything, trying to assist shaking those foundations so that we begin becoming sensitive to our original fabric. Our original fabric spans everywhere and in all things. For more information on this, I know I'm hitting you with a lot right now, and um, in quantum navigation, I have the introduction to quantum navigation course. Yes, here's the advert. But it's appropriate because a lot of what I'm hitting you with is pretty vast. And if you haven't gone through it, I highly recommend going through the introduction to quantum navigation, where it begins putting all of these pieces in greater depths and detail together so that we could talk on this level. Anyway, so getting back to the sun, and the sun has been going through this intensification, and um, it's has been doing the solar class, the M class and X class flares. Now, there's a purpose for all of that. And just like in the Schumann resonance, spiking and intensifying, increasing its frequency and its dynamics. So it's hitting us in so many ways and levels that it's literally shaking the spectrums of foundation where our consciousness has been attached to and holding on to, let's say, the roots of our masks and costumes. I don't know if you've noticed, but when you're in different scenarios and situations with the individuals, it's very common to feel the need to raise a certain boundary barrier, costume, or mask in order to fit in with the dynamics of the changing environment that you're in around individuals, because all individuals are working on different spectrums of consciousness. It's a part of who and what we are that we sense and feel the relativity to peace, centeredness, transparency, sincerity, and or not. And so you have to kind of dress appropriately. Well, the sun is in a constant state of flux. So it's constantly changing its corona, chromo, and photosphere. So it's in that changing dynamics, it's kind of putting on different frequency masks and costumes in order to present itself to the solar system and our world. And so it becomes, in essence, like a great teacher. And what it has been doing by sending those flares and stuff is kind of a testing of the fabric, testing of the who's paying attention, or how are you feeling towards the magnification of the frequencies being transmitted from the sun presence. And so the sun is a very conscious being, so it's watching and sensing, feeling, being open and aware of how we respond to the intensifications. Now, just as in the Schumann resonance, spiking and dynamically changing, and then that having an effect on us from our consciousness states, from our emotional states, even our physical states. So is the same with the frequencies coming from the sun in those X class and N class flares. So we're getting it from all directions. The intensification of the astrologics, the planetary alignments, and the Schumann resonance changing, spiking, and intensifying, and also the sun flares. And so these sun flares are testing again. They're adding to the spectrum of frequencies, digging deeper, so to speak, into our compartmentalizations, into the subtle fields where we hold deeper sense of residual self-image and phantom limb syndrome. Phantom limb syndrome is simply, if I were to cut off the blood flow to my arm, it goes through a significant series of changes where it starts to tingle and painful, then it becomes numb, and then it feels like it's separated and distant. And then when I release that pressure on the flow of the blood through it, then it goes through the opposite of it. And so that phantom limb syndrome is, even if we lose an arm, cut it off, and go through that process, it still has residual self-image and phantom limb syndroming, where it feels like, oh, my arm's still there and it's painful and I got to, or I've got to scratch it. So just like the limb, we hold identifications of our experience of holding different costumes, masks, and intensifications of our belief systems that further contract us into separation consciousness. So the sun doing these solar flares, MNX class, working in concert with the Schumann resonance and the astrologics, it's all starting to dredge up the more subtle layers and levels of such residual self-image, under-processed shadow issues that are surrounding the very roots of our shadow issues and our residual self-image and phantom limb syndrome. So these are old stories coming back to be seen, felt, and experienced in a different way. So very simply put, my stories, my experiences, my belief systems, they're mine, but they are not me. Your original fabric is something far more beyond that. Your an enigma. You're a paradox. Our original fabric, the more we move into realization of it, the more, and we are clearer about it, then this process begins of, uh, uh, let's say, purging those fabrics and the stratifications of the layers and levels of those fabrics where we still hold residual self-image and phantom limb syndrome. So the sun with the Schumann resonance and the astrologics is working all of those in concert with each other in order to assist in purging, because originally we didn't have bodies and we existed in all things across the continuum of consciousness in, um, let's say, unstructured and structured existence. So we are all that is. And so it's trying to assist us in shaking those foundations, those fabrics, those areas, those spectrums where we're still clinging and contracting into disidentification. And so, anyway, getting back to the sun, it's been intensifying its exposures in intensity and frequency, meaning how often it's been flaring up. So you get the sense of this energy emanating out and then retracting itself back in. Diminishing the intensification of that frequency. So that frequency then, as it's been intensifying, has been, like I said, shaking all the layers and levels of foundations where we still hold on to. And so it's been testing. And as it's been testing, it's bringing up a lot of repeated stories to purge them, because ironically and ideally, we are clarity, purity, like clear water, diamond clear water, but it's frequency, it's consciousness, and yet it's the paradox, nothing and everything. And so returning back to that after we've been exposed to and are conditioned by holding on to structured reality and structured existence and managing reality, it's quite a difference. And so the sun has been sending these pulses, shaking our foundation. And as you shake a foundation, almost like shaking out a rug, you see all the detritus, you see all the dust, all the layers of dirt and dust and things that aren't part of the rug. So the same thing, the Schumann resonance is doing it. It's intensifying that frequency, shaking our foundation. The sun is doing it, and also the astrologics are doing it in their own way. So emotionally, psychologically, mentally, even spiritually and physically, it's shaking in so many different ways, enabling us to see and feel and sense the difference between the continuum of consciousness and structured existence and our stories, our belief systems, our mind, and our emotions that lead us into contraction. So, okay. So the intensification of the sun and these flares is being followed by the sun opening up its sunspots. So when the sunspots are directly aligned towards the earth, then in that moment, there's a small aperture where the direct core of the sun can begin to transmit its frequencies from the core directly towards us. So imagine a nice clear sphere, and the sunspot is an aperture, an opening from the corona, the chromosphere, and the photosphere, exposing down past the convection layers all the way to the very core of the sun. So this is important because at the very core of the sun is where energy consciousness comes from, the continuum of consciousness in its maximum potential. So let's say it's gamma frequency. Okay, so gamma frequency comes into the core of the sun, and gamma particles holding gamma frequencies, they discharge inside of the sun. They bounce around, bouncing off of other gamma particles. Gamma is holding an intense amount of frequency, and that intense amount of frequency is like gamma radiation. Gamma radiation is very destructive to DNA because DNA holds the architecture of holding in a structured body. And so gamma rays hitting the DNA, it changes it, so it morphs it. So you see how powerful consciousness can be in that intensification of consciousness, light, frequency, etc., on DNA, which tries to hold structures into a body in order for it to have relativity and experience separation consciousness from the continuum into this existence. So gamma particles stay inside of the core of the sun for 1,000,000 years. And while they're in there for 1,000,000 years, they're banging, they're ricocheting off of each other, all other gamma particles. Every time they collide and ricochet off of other gamma particles, they reduce frequency until they get down to the photonic level. Photonic level is far less than the gamma frequency. So when they're photonic, then they're free to exit and roam about the cosmos. It's very poetic. So at the very core of the sun, you got these gamma particles, which are dangerous to the relative existence of all the structured bodies in the solar system, in the galaxy, et cetera, et cetera. They would be dangerous if they were floating around because they change reality. Okay. So anyway, at the very core, the gamma particles, the highest potentials, are coming in from unstructured existence. And they harbor inside of there for 1,000,000 years before they're allowed out. So this is important because gamma particles, gamma rays, the intense magnified potentialities existing at the core of the sun, they have a different radiance that comes from them. They're part of the all, so they emanate in all directions. And that becomes important because prior to that level, that apex of potentiality, they're existing at a state where they're of a less frequency. So frequencies circle back onto the center. And this has profound effects on us wearing the masks and the costumes. because inside of unconsciousness, particles start to emit currents that loop back around onto that unconscious particleization and localization of consciousness. So um, this is called, now science is at the point where it's starting to understand this, and they called it quantum metrics. So they found that there is looping of frequency magnetics energies that loop back onto the particles themselves. Now, particles, we're talking about muons, quarks, um, uh, protons, neutrons. So anything that comes into structured existence is affected by reducing the consciousness and forgetting where they came from. So there's a bit of unconsciousness. And in unconsciousness, particles loop back on to the center of their unconscious localization, their lapse of memory of who they are, where they came from, where they're going, and what's this all about. So that enables the journey of forgetting and then returning back to awakeness. So during that process of separating from the memory of all that is, so you can see that gamma particle. Gamma particle is aware, I am all things. So it radiates in an intense dynamic. It sends its energy out to the far corners or quarters of the continuum, because it is a particle of illumination itself. But in unconsciousness, the particle has to have the currents looping back onto it, the magnetics, the currents, the energies, the consciousness is looping back onto itself in a illusionary state. So in an illusionary state, forgetting who and what you are, then you can exist in object subject. So you can look at the continuum and feel like you had a separational journey. So long story made short, the gamma particles that are at the center of the core of the sun are starting to recognize that you are becoming aware enough of your realization that you exist everywhere. You're a paradox. There is no place you don't exist. And so it's sensing, you're starting to remember this. So that means the looping of the energy fields is now at a point where it can open the aperture and send you the frequency. Remember apex frequency? Remember gamma frequency, where it radiates in all directions. It's a paradox. So the sun then, in opening these apertures, these little sun spots, have now been intensifying and growing. That sunspot has become corona openings, and the sun is going through these phases. Now, this is what I've been tracking in while our quantum navigation group sessions have been tracking, especially this year. Now, yes, it's been tough. 2023, 2024, 2025, and now 2026, it's like intensifying even more. But if you've been doing the work, there's this vastness that's becoming so present, meaning you've cleared out all the compartmentalizations in the emotional body and in the mental body. sufficiently enough to now start to experience that these corona openings have a direct relationship to, first of all, I started noticing it mostly at first, mostly, and this was in like January, started noticing that the corona exposures and the increase of the corona exposures has been affecting the mind. So it's been working with letting go of your attachment to the stories that you have on any of your history, identity, and reputation. Uh, has he been purging those? And then the mind comes into a stiller, clearer spot, and it's emblematic of like a clear sphere. So the mind in a clear sphere kind of condition, there's no mental merry-go-round, and that is stimulation for the emotional roller coaster. So if you're able to um, experience the clear mind, having no mind, no, let's say, the used car salesman of the mind always pitching to you, telling you what you already know, that voice inside that's like constant mental chatter. If that clears, if that's been clearing for you, then the intensification of the corona openings have been sensed by a clear mind. And that clear mind experiences the intensification of the corona openings and exposure to the direct radiance coming from the core of the sun, let's say the gamma frequencies, which is, it's more than gamma, it's apex of frequencies. And if your mind is clear, then it senses this and it doesn't try to run off and try to hold on to the energy, or like sugar syndrome, run up, jump up and down, and, dance all over the place with the energy. Of course, that's a process. But you find as you utilize this energy, if you try to bridle it, saddle it, and ride it, yes, it intensifies your day and your creativity, and we're supposed to. But there's also another aspect to it, which is allowing it to draw you deeper into repose, opening yourself up and allowing the emanation to disseminate itself, discharge itself. And it doesn't end. It ends when you busy your mind, you distract yourself away from it. But if you repose, you go into appreciating it deeper, savoring it, the reverence, the communion, the engagement in a deeper sense. In all ways, it's like being the ocean instead of observing the ocean, and that's the point. So the intensification of that opening, corona openings, is testing, can you hold this frequency? Now, in my past, I used to do, I was a nerd. And so I was fascinated by fire walking. You go through a process, ceremonies, etc. But basically, what you're doing, I imagined at the time, I haven't done fire walking, but I imagined at the time that you go through these ceremonies and you're intensifying your inner discipline. So you're raising your inner frequencies, your inner clarity, your peace, your ability to repose in that quantum state of um, absolute fulfillment, peace, love, etc. And once you're inside of that, then you can then afford to test whether or not your frequency is at the range where fire doesn't affect you. So, in that theory, I thought I'd put it to practice. And so, at campfires at night, I would get into that state, deep in the love frequency, the peace, the quantum state. And then once I felt I was imbibed with that, I was um, uh, drawing myself deeper into that, reposing into that state. And I felt it flowing all through me. Then I would chance sticking my hand into the fire, and I found, wow, frequency does assuage the effects of the heat. Now, I followed that into sweat lodging, and inside of Native American sweat lodge, it's the same kind of a principle. You use the fire to draw yourself deeper into the heart, and each successive session with the sweat lodge on that given night is a little bit hotter, a little more intense, a little bit longer with the fire energy. And so as you move deeper into the heart and allow that to spread throughout your whole being, so your whole being is subsumed into the heart frequency, then the intensification of the heat doesn't bother you. You feel it, but it doesn't bother you. And so I also tried it in the opposite with going into 37-degree water. In the Virgin River in Zion with a friend of mine who challenged me. He was a Marine, so he went into the freezing water, 37 degrees. The Zion National Park has constantly monitors the water temperature, water flow, etc., weather conditions, and all that. All very important if you're going to Zion and going into the Virgin River. Anyway, it was 37 degrees, and he went in and was swimming around, and he's taunting me. So I decided, okay, I'll try it out, but just use the principle of the sweat lodge and push that energy all the way to the tips of your fingers, because the extremities are where the cold comes in first. So if you keep the heart energy, the frequency constantly flowing intentionally all the way to your fingertips and toes, you should be able to do it. So I knew time would be distorted. So I thought, okay, I gotta stay inside of this for what seems like exceptionally long periods of time. Anyway, I went in and did it. I was in there for 20 minutes and 37 degrees of water up to my neck. So got out. So it was still alive. There was no ice cube around. But it works. It works in frequency. And then, of course, one other element that I would do, and I don't recommend anybody do this, but I did it because I was curious, and I wanted to experiment and test to see if this works. But I was a meditator have been for quite a long time, but would go into meditation, and I would purposely look at the sun, and I got to the point where I could watch the sun for a half an hour while I was in that state. Now, the vision purple is very important. The vision purple will come up, and it kind of coats the corona of the sun, and I think that's what assisted me in not damaging my corona. Anyway, long story made short. So frequency does matter. So these intensifications of the sun and opening its aperture is testing to see if you can imbibe that energy, take that energy in, and while you're taking in that energy, can you use that energy to emanate it in all directions, meaning taking it in and extending it out at the same time. So as you repose inside of the heart energy, then that becomes possible. So now back to the sun. So as it was working and with the mind and clearing the mind center, I began also noticing that it was also cleansing the heart in a deeper sense. Hence, more subtle compartmentalizations were coming up as I was reposing longer into this great feeling inside of the mind without it, moving into the used car salesman, the constant mental chatter. So as I was able to hold this, then I noticed it was working on cleansing any compartmentalizations, and that's important. And so as January went on, I started noticing that as this was clearing, then all that work we've been doing and purging has been making a difference, and it makes sense. You got to clear the house completely, your inner house and infrastructure of your sense of sourceness within. When you clear those infrastructures, then this mind center drops into the heart center. Well, you first begin starting to feel the heart center becoming like that mind center. It's just open and clear. And so I'm using this snow cone. It's two turtles, and anyway, I'm using this as a sphere, a clear sphere. I don't have a smaller clear sphere, so I'm using this. So just imagine this is nice and clear. So this being the mind sphere, and when the heart sphere is sufficiently enough purged of those residual self-image, phantom limb syndrome within the subtle compartmentalizations, those fields have been cleared, then it seems the mind field drops into the center of the heart sphere. So the mind, as we know, it magnifies potentials, visions, etc. So it's a great magnifier of whatever you place it on. So if it's nice and clear and nothing's going on, and it moves down into the heart center, then it magnifies the potential at the center of the heart. Now, this, as imagine that there was a bright center of sourceness at the center of your heart, the core of your heart. This is very much like that gamma core inside of the sun, the center of the sun. So at the gamma core center of the sun, the very source, center of sourceness, you will see, experience, feel this radiance coming from within, and it's paradoxical, it's counterintuitive. There's nothing you need to do. The character is preconditioned to try to do things, and this is not about doing, this is about reposing, dissolving, resolving in that repose. And as you repose deeper inside of that, the natural radiance and emanation from that apex of, let's say, gamma, but it's much more than gamma, apex frequencies can emanate in all directions. Now, that emanation is important to open those looping conduits of energy, the constructs of energy that filter in on the self for its mask and costumes. Instead, those folds are now being stimulated to extend out, unfold their folds, and branch out into the continuum. So there's this transition point that exists where you move from object subject. So from the characters stratifications, layers and levels of separation identity, history and personality, viewing the continuum, so to speak, as you lean back and repose inside of the inner illumination, it moves you out from the characters' masks and costumes into emanating your original beingness across the continuum of consciousness, and that exists in the unstructured and the structured alike because they all came from the one. And so this process of the opening aperture of the corona of the sun, the corona holes, has been growing and intensifying, and it's hasn't stopped. It's testing the waters. It keeps opening and closing. Can you repose into the allness of your original state of it? Remember you were this. And then it closes back up and you move back into the character and the separation, identity, history, and personality with all your dramas and traumas. But they're yours. They're not who you are. You're much more beyond that. And so as it opens again in the next event, then it's testing the waters to see, it's giving us another experiential opportunity to work with, exercise the releasing, detaching, then reposing into the boundless continuum of consciousness and your own experience of apex frequencies coming back to the forefront. So I'm going to try to create a advanced workshop. I'm going to call it the Advanced Quantum Navigation. I'm going to be putting that on probably in July, but I'm going to take this step by step and then work to that point. Anyway, I wanted to share this and get this out there because I think what's happening with the Schumann resonance, and thank you, Schumann resonance website or Facebook site for your constant monitoring of and providing of the graphics for all of that. The Earth's changing frequencies, and all those who are out there sharing the astrologics changes that have been going on for our sense of evolution, and also now this sun presence. Now, I think I think this has always happened, but I'm just getting more sensitive to it. And I thought it would be important to share this stuff. So anyway, I hope this is somewhat helpful. And if you want more information, please do contact me, Ronald Holt at hotmail.com. And thank you for your attention. Bye now.